Item number 8, public hearings. We do have 2 public hearings this evening. Notices have been published, posted, and mailed. The first hearing is to hold a public hearing, waive the first reading, and adopt a plan development PD ordinance amendment to the development plan to allow 2 alternative design options. Adopt a resolution approving a 12-month extension of plan development permit 0502, which currently allows for the demolition of the existing 308-unit apartment complex and the development of 510 new residential units, and adopt a resolution approving Plan Development Permit 1001 and Architecture Review Permit 1006 to allow for the renovation of the existing 308 apartment units per Chapter 12 of the San Bruno Municipal Code as an alternative project design option under the development plan. AMCO San Bruno Apartment Partners, LP, is the owner and applicant. Staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. As you know, this is the 3rd time that staff is before you within the last 5 years related to the Treetops project. And I'll begin with a brief background of this project history. The apartment building that stands there today was originally approved in 1985, and it lasted for about 20 years, and in 2005, AMCO applied to the city, and it was eventually heard by the City Council in 2006 for several different entitlements. The first was a general plan amendment, and what this general plan, as the council knows, the general plan controls all land use within the city, and it designates how many units you could have on each acre, how many homes you could have on each acre of land. And they amended the general plan at that point to take the maximum density from 30 units an acre to 40 units an acre. So that was part of their original entitlement request. The second thing that they did was a request to amend the zoning district there. And the zoning district on this particular site is a planned development zoning district. And you need a development plan for each planned development. And their development plan called for 510 units on the site. The third entitlement they asked for, anytime that you have a planned development, you also need a planned development permit. And what the permit does is it goes over all the details. It goes from architecture to landscaping, to how the site will be served, circulation, parking requirements, on all the little details. So this, after a number of hearings, planning commission meetings, city council hearings, this project was approved, and AMCO received entitlements for 510 units on this site. Fast forward 2 years, 2008, the economy had started to fall down at that point, and the AMCO realized that the project that they had proposed and got approved was too expensive for the type of construction materials and the type of parking arrangement that they had. So at that point, they applied to the City Council for amendment to their planned development permit in order to allow architectural changes as well as architectural changes primarily, as well as a new parking configuration. It was the same parking requirement, but it was a different parking configuration where the parking was embedded in the building rather than underneath the building. They also got approved for a subdivision map at that time to allow their units to turn into condominiums if they chose to go that route. Fast forward again to this year. As you know, the apartment buildings still sit up there vacant. Unfortunately, the economy has continued to fall down, and the residential lending environment is not suitable for a large development at this time. So the AMCO requested a unique request, and what they're requesting right now is they're not having to amend the general plan because they do fit within the density arrangement with the lot line adjustment that they're proposing. But what they are doing is proposing to amend the planned development zoning district there to allow 2 development options. The first development option is the 510 unit building that was already approved. And the second development option, and the one that they're particularly focused on right now, is the renovation project, to simply renovate the 308 units that exist there right now, plus add a 6,500 square foot leasing building. So what this requires is an amendment to the zoning district. They're also requesting an amendment to their previously approved planned development permit for the 510 units. And why they're doing that is the 510 unit permit was set to expire this month. So they're requesting an amendment to extend that 1 year. And why they're doing that, although they do not have financing in place for this development, and they're probably not going to go that route, they do want to keep all their options open just in case the market changes or in case the lending environment changes. The entitlement that they are focused on is the second planned development permit, and they're requesting a new one now, and that's to renovate the 308 units that are on site. So that is what they are requesting now. And just to go over some details, the architect and the developer could go more into the architectural details, and I could respond to any questions that you have. But I'll go over a few aspects of the project. The buildings, they will be upgraded. I think the most important thing is the type of materials that they will be using is more suitable for the environment. As you know, part of the problem was that they used a wood-based siding on the existing buildings, and that didn't last well in the fog that they have up in this area of San Bruno. So what they are proposing now, and was a particular interest of the Planning Commission, is they're proposing a hardy plank siding, which is a cement-based siding that will do better in that environment. Regarding the layout is pretty much the same. They are proposing, as I mentioned, on the corner of Sharp Park and Skyline, they're proposing a 6,500 leasing building, about a 4,800 square foot footprint. It'll also have a recreation type center upstairs for the residents. The existing leasing center will be turned into a gym for the residents. Regarding parking, they're proposing to maintain the existing parking level that is there, which is about 1.68 parking spaces per unit, which you know is below the current requirement. However, there isn't room to expand. They're not expanding the number of units, and there wouldn't be physically room to expand the number of parking spaces on site. Regarding density of this project, it's about 23 units an acre. In order to meet the minimum density requirements, they're actually submitting a lot line adjustment, which would reduce the total amount of acreage on site, which would get the density up to about 24 units an acre, which is the minimum general plan density, and there is a condition that they have to complete this lot line adjustment soon. Regarding circulation, same circulation as before. You have Treetop Circle, which basically serves the interior of the project. You have Susan Drive, which cuts through the project and then goes down, eventually goes down to Sharp Park Road. And you have Highland Drive, which is on the northern perimeter of the site. All three of those streets are actually within the project boundaries. Although the public has gone over them in the last 20 years, they actually are part and within the public boundaries. The applicant could also go more into landscaping, but they have upgraded the landscaping, took the staff guidance and city council policy direction of using landscaping that is native or drought tolerant, that will really reduce the total amount of water on site that has to be used for landscaping. A related aspect, the Planning Commission was really, they wanted to see this, they wanted to see the attachment. You could see all the green building techniques that they are building into this project. It is at the level in which they could receive LEED certification, although it's a pretty costly and timely effort to actually receive LEED certification, so they're not going to go for the LEED certification, but they will be LEED equivalent for the project. A particular interest of the police department, they will have an on-site security guard there for nighttime hours. They'll also have 4 to 5 staff members on site during daytime hours. Garbage and recycling, you'll see that this is an item that took up most of the time at the Planning Commission. It's also an item that the neighbor here, Evergreen Ridge, is here to speak on, and there's also a number of letters that relate to this. As currently proposed, as originally proposed, AMCO had proposed to locate their trash and recycling within an indent into the Evergreen Ridge property that was located only about 15 feet away from the Evergreen Ridge buildings. Given the size of the property, and especially the size of the south property line, the adjoining property line that Evergreen Ridge and Treetops shares, we asked AMCO to move that trash area to a more suitable location. They did move it up the property line, so now the trash compactor sits about 40 feet away, 44 feet away from the nearest Evergreen Ridge building. Before we recommended approval of this location, we met with Recology. We wanted to make sure, A, that the noise is contained, that is minimal, and B, that that there's not odor that comes out of the trash compactor. Regarding noise, this only would be compacted once a day. It would also only be accessed because they can compact, and this is a preferred method of Recology. Because they can compact, they only have to access the site once a week. Recology has also agreed to only access the site between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. to further reduce the noise impacts to the adjoining neighbor, Evergreen Ridge. Regarding odor, it's a sealed container, so you don't have the same odor problems that you have with the older open dumpsters where the lids could be opened at some times, where trash could be hanging out of it, and you do have a lot of odor issues. By way of comparison, the Crossing, Meridian, and Paragon, the first two, have trash compactors, similar models that are located directly underneath units at the Crossing, and we have not received complaints. Recology has not received complaints about noise or about odor. So staff is confident in our recommendation that there will not be an impact on the adjoining neighbors. It's also just a point of interest and also shown within your staff report. Although it wouldn't be the same size trash compactor, there are also, Evergreen Ridge also has a dumpster located along that same adjoining property line. The Planning Commission wanted AIMCO to investigate other areas away from that southern property line to see if they could be suitable. AIMCO did explore 5 other alternatives. The primary obstacle to locating in any of those, I think there's 3 primary obstacles. Number one, they're already below today's parking requirement. So we did not want to see an elimination of more spaces within the development. And most other spots where they could locate it would eliminate spaces. The second is there's a lot of easements that go along the property, and it's difficult to locate the garage, the trash enclosure area in an area that's outside an easement. And the third thing is that the AIMCO did not want this in the doorstep, to the front doorstep of their property, so they did not want to locate it right in the front entrance. So with all those 3 factors, and given the fact that this is a suitable and there won't be noise or odor impact, staff is confident in our recommendation to locate it in this new spot. One change from the Planning Commission. At Planning Commission, they had recycling still located in that 15-foot indent area, and the trash enclosure moved 40 feet away. We've asked them to put those all together, so there will be no longer the recycling only 15 feet away from Evergreen Ridge. They'll actually be all located in the same location. One other thing, there was a letter from North Coast Water about the easement area. I spoke to the general manager about an hour ago. They're no longer having their request to continue. They have worked out an agreement with AIMCO, and they no longer have an objection to the project. 2 conditions of approval that we need to look at. The first one relates to the number of street trees. The street tree requirement within the code is they have to put a certain number of street trees in, dependent on the number of the street frontage that they have, and that equates to a little bit over 100 trees. We put an exact number of how many would count towards that street tree requirement based on the current landscaping plan that they have. However, if their final landscaping plans show that there are actually more street trees, we would credit them that total amount. The remaining amount could go towards a street tree planting program in the neighborhood, similar to a successful program, similar to what we have with the Summerhill project, on some type of Arbor Day program to plant street trees around the neighborhood. And the second condition, one that we should have in and we left out, relates to the Sharp Park and Susan Drive intersection. As the council knows, it's a difficult intersection. As you go down that little snake road on Susan Drive, you have to crane your neck back to look. And what we like to have added is that the applicant shall trim or remove vegetation to the satisfaction of the Public Service Director to improve site visibility at Susan Drive and Sharp Park intersection. We'd also like to make sure they maintain it, so the landscaping shall be maintained to ensure adequate site visibility for the life of the project. So those are the basic overview of the project. As the council knows, there is one remaining issue of disagreement between staff and the applicant, and this has to do over roadway and utility ownership issues. As I mentioned, there are 3 primary roads that serve the site. There's Treetop Circle, there's Susan Drive, and there's Highland Drive. All three streets are within the project area, and although they were originally offered for dedication in 1985, they were never officially accepted by the city, and they haven't been maintained by the city at that time. As conditioned in the resolutions, and as proposed to the Planning Commission, the roadway as well as the utility systems would remain private. They would be privately maintained and privately owned. Susan Drive and Highland Drive would have a public access easement over them so that the public can continue to use the roadways as they have over the last 25 years. What AIMCO is proposing is requesting the city do is that the city would actually accept the roadways and accept the utilities underneath these roadways for the life of the project. This is only for Susan Drive and Highland Drive. We're actually in agreement for Treetop Circle. AIMCO has agreed that the Treetop Circle utilities and the Treetop Circle roadway, they would maintain and they would own. Two important things to note. The first is it's not one or the other. The city could accept the roadways, could accept Susan Drive and Highland Drive, but not accept the utilities underneath them. Regarding the utilities themselves, and it's something that's important, and the reason that staff is recommending it this way, all the utilities that AIMCO is proposing for us to take ownership of only serve Treetop's residents. So to put it, to make a common analogy, it's like a giant lateral for the system. As you know, in your front yard of a single-family home, you have your lateral that connects to the main sewer system. In this project, they have the on-site utilities, although some of them are underneath these roadways, that eventually connect to the sewer system. So staff does not feel it's good public policy or good policy from a planning or public works standpoint to take on these utilities that only serve the Treetops development. The roadway, it has been a private, used as a private roadway, although there's been public access over the same 25 years. Overall, there probably is more public interest in the public roadway than there is on the private utilities that only serve the AIMCO residents. So that's a summary as the issues as they stand right now. And we'll take any questions at this time.
Any questions of staff at this time?
Through the chair.
Mr. Ibarra?
Where are we with, can you again reiterate, where are we with the trash, the compactor?
So as it's proposed and as we're recommending right now, the trash compactor, at least point out where, the trash compactor would be located on the area that she's pointing to now. It's about 40 feet away or 44 feet away from the nearest building in Evergreen Ridge, and it would be completely enclosed, structure.
And so the objection letters that we have in front of us are objecting to that option. And so my question is, I remember the 510 unit project, and there was a trash facility. I don't know if the compactor was there, but it was adjacent to Susan Drive on the south east corner, somewhat sort of like a overflow parking area, I remember. Why has there been any option to it being located there, or possibly where those carports are or something?
I believe where the...
I don't know what this thing looks like. I don't know if... I don't know how tall it is. How can you screen it?
Yeah, we'll pass out. Okay, Evergreen Ridge at that, during the original one, also did not want it at that location. There's a view easement in that area. There's also many other easements that run along that property line, which make it difficult. Lisa's getting a color exhibit. There's black and white copied exhibits in the staff report, but the color exhibit will give a better photo simulation of what the trash enclosure looks like. As you know, there's a lot more standards now for trash enclosures than there used to be. You can't just build an open dumpster anymore because of stormwater regulations and, of course, aesthetic considerations.
Do you want to say?
So that is the applicant and staff are not pursuing anything that's not adjacent to
Yeah, unfortunately, based on the site constraints, staff, this is the area that they proposed that we're recommending be the final location of it. We were not recommending it when it was actually in a closer location at 15 feet, but we feel this is far away enough, taking into consideration other site limitations.
And the Planning Commission approved this alternate location?
No. What the Planning Commission did was they asked them to explore. They felt that AIMCO had not put enough time exploring other locations on site. We actually started going over like each location at the Planning Commission meeting, which took a long time and really didn't lead to anything. So they asked them to explore and then present to you the alternative locations.
It's nice of them.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Michael? Any questions?
On the same subject, is there anything quantifiable that we could look at to actually say there's at a certain number of feet, so many decibels of sound? I mean, a nuisance is kind of hard to quantify, but if we had some numbers and say we could compare it to, I don't know, a car starting up, a truck, something.
What we do have, and what would also be required for this, is required for any residential district, is we have noise limits and ambient noise levels for residential districts. So we could add to this condition that we could add a condition to this that to be consistent with all ambient noise requirements for residential districts. And they could have a test, or we could do a test, and if they do not meet those ambient noise requirements, then they will have to find a different location on site.
Through the chair, just
Vice Mayor.
Go off what Councilmember Salazar. Can you equate that for the average person maybe listening to us? What does that mean? Because it sounds good, but the average person may not know what you're referencing as far as noise level.
So, I mean, the best way we usually use ambient noise levels for construction-related activity. And, you know, there's a 65 decibel level for after 10 p.m. At noise areas. And that is generally, you know, if you hear a hammer, that's usually about at a 65 decibel level. I don't know all the particular ones. I could get back to the council of that. There's actually, you know, noise studies that show which, you know, a car starting up is at 85 decibels, a plane going over is 125 decibels. But I don't have those in front of me.
That gives us some range of understanding.
Yeah.
That's all I was looking for, so we can put it in.
They've limited to 9 to 12.
Yeah, the time restriction's also in there.
Okay.
And going back to the same item, a couple of these letters and glancing at them, it's the odor is a concern. I know you said it's enclosed. The noise, which you somewhat addressed, the visual, which I think it's concealed. It's what is the common practice or knowledge as far as the odor concern, or as far as its visual effect, or as far as
Yeah, I mean, I would say out of staff's, you know, out of the top three concerns of visual concerns, noise concerns, and odor concerns, I think odor was probably the one, because it's a constant, that we were most concerned about. After meeting with Recology and finding out that these same type of compactors are actually directly underneath units at the crossing, and there are not complaints, we are confident that there will not be the odor impacts that there are typically found when you have open dumpster situations.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff at this time? I see the applicant is in the audience. Would you like to address the council before I open the public hearing?
Thank you. Is this on? Great. My name is Patty Schwader. I'm Senior Vice President at Apartment Investment and Management Company, or AIMCO. We're happy to see you again, and we're hopeful that the third time is a charm for this project. I think Aaron gave a wonderful history of looking forward and looking back, and we would like to look forward tonight, hopefully, and get this project off the ground. I've got a whole team here. I'll introduce some of them. Sean Finnegan, who's our Regional Development Planner. He's somewhere around here. Scott MacArthur, our Regional Property Management Manager, who's hoping that actually we'll have a property to manage as we build and fill up treetops or Pacific Bay vistas. Jim Van Sickle, our VP of Development, is here. Cecily Barkley and George Corey, our wonderful attorneys, and then we've got others on the development team that Sean will introduce. And again, I want to thank the staff for bearing with us and really working hard over these last few years to find a project that can be built, constructed, and financed in this turbulent market, and also thank the council for their patience as well. The first slide, Jim, oh, there you are. Our goals are virtually the same as they have been, and that is to provide a major gateway to the city of San Bruno. Our property sits in a wonderful gateway, and we want to make use of it. As Aaron said, we want to add an alternative development plan that's consistent with the previous zoning approvals. We want to create a well-designed residential neighborhood, and we've been back with a couple of plans, but we believe that this is contextual with the neighborhood and will be high-quality architectural features and excellent landscaping. Take advantage of the location and views. It's beautiful up there, even in the clouds. It's a wonderful location, and revitalize the neighborhood. We feel as you do. It's been empty far too long, and the best thing that could happen is we build the project, fill it up, and revitalize the neighborhood and this portion of the city. I want to stress that we do want to continue our partnership with the city. All of you, the staff, have just been terrific. Our neighbors have been working with us over the years, sometimes understanding, sometimes getting on us for doing various things, but thank you very much for sticking with us. And also our partnership with the Building Trades Council, which we have signed an agreement to work with them to the extent possible to make sure that this is a union labor project and gets built that way to the extent that it's financially feasible. And again, we do want to gain approval for a project, and I can't stress this enough, that can be actually financed and built in today's market. We're one of the largest owners of housing in the country. We're doing 2 projects this year. Last year we did 0. You're one of the 2 projects. And so we're very eager to get this off the ground and bring it to reality. Project highlights, Aaron mentioned most of this. I just want to highlight a couple of things. Major renovation of all 308 apartments, complete interior and exterior renovation of all the 14 buildings, associated site work, common area improvements. Buildings will be down to the studs. They will not be recognizable when you see them. The floor plans will be significantly upgraded. There will be a new clubhouse with a leasing center to be built on the vacant parcel on the corner of Sharp Park and Skyline Boulevard. Susan Drive, this was a question in the last couple approvals, will remain open as a public roadway. Hopefully the city will accept ownership and maintenance of that road. The hillside, our neighbors to the hillside have commented on the landscaping. Our landscape architect will talk a little in more detail, but I want to say our plan is to have it sustainable with drought-tolerant plants and make it really a credit to the property and to the city. Green project with energy-efficient units and energy-efficient appliances. This project will be 500 times more energy efficient than the previous one. That's a huge bang for the buck. We're looking at Energy Star appliances and lighting, low-flow toilets, showers, irrigation controllers, everything that we can put in that will make this a much more energy-efficient project. And I know Councilwoman O'Connell has worked with us over the years on the recycling, trash compaction program. As Aaron said, we did go around the site, almost the entire site of the Planning Commission, looking for spots, and I believe we've got it appropriately designed and located now with advanced technology that will not be loud, be very efficient, and really minimize the need for trucks on site. So I will now turn it over to Sean to introduce the architectural team, and then hopefully we can get back to some of those issues and questions that you had.
Thanks, Patty. Mayor, members of the council, and also staff, my name is Sean Finnegan with AIMCO. I'd like to also thank all of you for your time and efforts on this project over the many years and more so recently. We think this is a great milestone for us and the city, and we're really excited about moving forward, and we're hoping that we gain your approval tonight to get this thing off and running. With that, I'd like to introduce our architect to go into just a little bit more detail on what we're planning on doing with the buildings architecturally, and also our landscape architect. So first will be John Garrison with Newman Garrison Partners, and then followed by Paul Reed with Reed & Associates.
Sean and council members. This view that you see here is the new building we're calling the leasing center at the corner of Sharp Park and Skyline, and that is an all-new building on what's currently a vacant parcel. It's a two-story building and will be built to all the new standards that are in current code. Jim, let's move forward to more to the elevations, the color elevations. Aaron did an excellent job of describing the project and all the things that we are doing. I wanted to add also that one of the things that came up during Planning Commission was a concern for better materials, and that also was brought up in Aaron's review of where the project has been over the last 20 years. We will not be using many wood products on this, the exterior. They will be wood-like in appearance. You can see from this view, and another. Here's the new recreation building. This is the current leasing center, which has a completely different roof. We're actually building a whole new structure here as well. It will have a beach-like or ocean appearance to it, East Coast appearance. And though the sidings and such are wood-like materials, they are actually very mold-resistant and fire-resistant materials. Go on. Keep going. Here, I also wanted to point out that even though all 14 buildings currently are the exact same building, they have all the same siding, they're all the same color, we wanted to come in and using the same structure. The structure actually is very good out there. We're going to reskin it with very varied materials here. They're all siding, but there's different types of siding. There's some new railings. We're going to be adding some brick veneer. We'll also have, go to the next one, Jim, 2 different color schemes on site so that they're not all the same color, not all the same look. All the roofing will be replaced. All the siding, all the windows, everything on the outside will be all new. Let's go to the next one. I just wanted to talk about some of the unit plans. Go to the unit plans. The last thing I would want to just bring up is that even though the current project has no accessible units, those for handicap needs, we are making some accommodation where we can, where the grading is level enough, this is a hillside location, to allow us to make some units that will be accessible so that people with special needs will be able to come in and use these apartments just like any other current apartment. In that regard, we're not going to be able to meet the current California code, which the city building official knows about, but it's an attempt to gain some, actually in everything that we're doing to make the project better than it ever was, better materials, better plans, and a more interesting color palette. Next one. So with that, I'd like to introduce Paul Reed, who's our landscape architect.
Good evening. Glad to be here this evening. My name is Paul Reed. I'm with Reed Associates. On the landscaping, we're basically redoing all the landscaping on the project. The hillside right now has quite a quantity of pampas grass that will be removed, and basically the whole courtyard is going to be redone, walkways widened, all new walkways, sitting areas, covered barbecue areas. We're really trying to create an experience where people can use the outside as much as possible. And also, we'll be doing this with using native and non-native drought-tolerant plant material. All the irrigation will be completely redone with drip systems in narrow areas and efficient spray systems in larger areas. And we're adding over 200 trees to the project. Some of the trees right now that are existing on the site that are not healthy will be replaced, and the trees are going to be replaced at a level of about 3 to 1 new trees for every tree removed. Thank you.
Could I ask a question at this point?
Sure, go ahead.
Regarding the architect, I believe Patty mentioned that the buildings will be stripped to the studs. I mean, is that the plan? Has every building been inspected? And so they will be thoroughly stripped?
Yes,
What-
they will all be thoroughly stripped. They have not all been pre-inspected. We have gone through an inspection of some of the buildings, or we inspected all the buildings, but we can't know all the damage that's there until you really go in, and there's a lot of trash, there's overgrown plants. Once we pull off all the siding and all the interiors, then we can see where any damage may have been done to any of the studs. And actually, we found that the structure is quite good. A lot of the framing looks, brand new, just like it's been never touched. A lot of the bad-looking conditions you see out there's mildew and there's some mold on the exterior materials. There is some obvious rot. All those things will be replaced. I didn't mention, but the building official also asked our structural engineer to improve the structure of the buildings from where they were originally done. They can't be made to meet current code because we really can't change the foundations that they sit on. That would have to also be redone. But we are making improvements to the structural frame so that they're stronger than they were before. And that will be done on a building-by-building review with the city.
So is it fair to say that in some cases there might be a fair condition of a building, and so it won't be stripped, and there may be some sheetrock left and some roofing left?
No, actually, our intention is to remove all the drywall, no matter what shape it's in, all the roofing, all the windows, doors, everything down to the studs. The only thing that will remain are the structural items. Any exterior plywood that is a part of the frame will remain, but even those are going to be inspected, reviewed for nailing. If things are rusted, connections aren't good, they'll be replaced and made better than new.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to invite Cecily, our attorney, to go through some last slides, if we could.
Great.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cecily Barclay, and I am the land use attorney who I've been working on this project along with most of the people at this table and behind me for the last 5 years. I was involved in the first 2 project approvals and have spent a lot of time in the last 6 to 8 months working on this set of approvals. I did send to the City Council and to staff a letter that I hope each of you have received, and I do, for the record, want to give a copy to the city clerk so that we have that in the record this evening. And what I'd like to do is, I won't go through all of the issues in the letter, but I do think that these are very important and critical items that we get resolved as quickly as possible so that the project can move forward. It is very much AIMCO's desire, and I believe everybody that's worked on this project desire, to have the third time be a charm. And so the first and most important issue is the ownership of the roads and the utilities. And I would like to take a few moments to talk about the roads in particular, and that is, I've laid out in this letter that I wrote the history, which everybody acknowledges. They were offered for dedication, and at that time there was a public access easement put on these roads. So the public has been using them for 20 years, and there's no way to stop the public from using them. We cannot take them back and own them privately. As a result, when we went out to get financing, the only lender that we have who can obtain the kind of guarantee that we need from HUD has told us that HUD will not, their staff has told them here in the San Francisco office, they will not guarantee a loan that's secured by collateral with a public road down the middle of it. You know, after 20 years of apparently no maintenance, we're willing to spend $158,000 of maintenance as part of this condition of approval. We'll do that. If all we had to do was spend another $150,000 in 20 years, we wouldn't be asking you to please accept dedication of these roads. It's not about the cost of maintaining them. We'll bring them up to speed, and we think that the maintenance costs are not that significant. What's significant is that it might interfere with our ability to get a loan. And Rick Andrews, whose letter I gave you, explained to me that HUD has gone from guaranteeing 10% of the multifamily
products that are being built and financed today to over 50%, and that the demands on HUD are enormous, and there are dozens of loans in the pipeline. This is a very significant loan for them, and if we make it complicated and we become a roadblock instead of something that's easy for HUD to do, they could turn their attention to a simpler loan, a loan that actually is geared towards restricted, affordable housing. This is a market rate project. It does provide a lot of workforce housing because of the nature of it, but there aren't any restrictions on it. We are genuinely worried that if we don't do this right, we may lose an opportunity to get the only financing that we've been able to secure in the last 5 years for a project that's this close. So we really ask you to consider this in accepting the dedication of the roads, which we think is consistent with the history, and we do want to give them to you in the best condition possible, and we're agreeing to put up a letter of credit that will do that maintenance work, and that we'll do it as soon as we get the financing in place and as soon as the city would accept them. So we're going to get them as good a condition as we can. On the idea of separating the sewer and water and storm drains that are under the public roads, we are open to keeping some obligation for the sewers, but we have to caveat that by saying we've got to go back and talk to our lender. We may run into the same roadblock, pardon the pun, that because their security is going to be on the private property for the lender, that if we then still have an obligation to own and maintain utilities that are in a public right-of-way, it could again throw our loan potential wrinkle that we're not going to recommend. This isn't again about that it's an extensive amount of maintenance. In fact, again, over 20 years, we're only going to have to do about $40,000 worth of work. So we wouldn't necessarily mind keeping these sewers and maintaining them, but we have to go back and make sure it's not going to mess our loan up. I just telling you that is what this issue is all about. And so we could do that if we get direction from the council to try to work this out and be able to keep the sewers, we could do that. I think, and if you'd like, we could have Sean and Finnegan and Aaron Aiken or whomever speak to this. I think the storm drains actually do serve Evergreen, and they come off of Evergreen and they run through the public road. And so I think it may actually make sense for the city to keep the storm drains. It's not an expensive item, but I think that should be talked about as well as the water. But it's not a big deal. These are things that we think we can work out. The key is that if we keep ownership of any of these items and maintenance obligation, then it not do anything to complicate our financing. And that is our most serious concern on that topic. In terms of the other items, I know that there was a discussion by Aaron of two issues, the first being the roads and the utilities, and the second being the, Aaron, I can't remember the item you mentioned, but it was fine.
Street trees.
The street trees, that was fine. There were a number of other issues that I do want to bring to the council's attention in our letter. And the first is that AIMCO is willing to spend at least $220,000 and maybe more on improving the sewers on the private property and under the roads. We're willing to do the road maintenance and all of the other financial conditions, but they do disagree with staff's recommendation that as part of this rehabilitation project that they also reimburse the city for $179,000 that was spent to repair an existing off-site sewer line. We think that should be paid for out of all of the various sewer fees that are collected throughout the city, not hookup fees, but ongoing sewer costs that are funded, as well as property taxes. We're just another property owner like everybody else trying to keep our 308 unit apartments going, and we don't think we should have to reimburse the city for an off-site improvement that wasn't put in place to serve this 308 unit project. And so as a result, we don't feel that it's fair that that now be imposed on our project. The other issues, we'll come back to that one if you'd like. I'll go ahead and address the others. The next issue which is on page 5 of our letter is just we want to make clear that we'll repair all the sewers by the certificate of occupancy. We've also wanted to make clear in the conditions that that there not be any additional capacity or sewer and water hookup fees that were in the conditions because we already have a project. But any new items, like the clubhouse. Of course, we would pay for those connection fees. We're also prepared to replace the water meters that are appropriately sized for the project. There were water meters on, they've been taken off. We're going to get charged for new water meters. We've proposed some language in the conditions, but we're prepared to do that. We've also submitted a maintenance plan to the city that we think reflects the conditions of approval and the discussions that we've been having, but we did offer, based on some conversations that we had with staff over the last month or two, some changes to the condition about how the maintenance would work. I think those will be acceptable to staff when they have an opportunity to review them. And we've also proposed that for certain of these items, that if we can go and get this financing in place guaranteed by HUD over the summer, get the financing closed by September, and have construction in October, that we don't want to be doing some of these items that are really meant to be longer term maintenance if there's no activity on the property. So we're proposing that if we start the demolition process by November 1st, that certain of the painting and power washing and glass removal would not need to occur between now and November 1st, but all the other items of the maintenance plan would, and that would include weekly inspections and pool maintenance and insurance and those types of things. And that's detailed in the letter, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has. We also thought important to add a condition making it clear that we need to get a lot line adjustment done to make sure that the density on the project site meets the general plan requirements. And that covers, there's also a condition about making sure that garages are used primarily for parking vehicles and wouldn't impede any, any storage that a family might use in their garage wouldn't impede their ability to park their cars there, and that any new structures wouldn't be built over PUEs. There was a requirement that there be no structures over public utility easements. At the moment, there are some structures over some existing easements, so we just made it clear that the new building wouldn't be over any existing PUE. And that summarizes all the issues laid out in the letter. I believe that with the exception of the reimbursement of the $179,000 and the ownership of the road, that the other conditions are items that we will be able to work out the language with staff, but that we will need some direction from council on the acceptance of the road and possibly the utilities if we cannot get comfortable that it wouldn't interfere with our HUD financing, and that also, because we're paying all the road improvements and the sewer improvements, that we not also have to reimburse the city for the $179,000 that was spent last year. And that concludes my portion of the presentation tonight.
Cecily, I have a question, just so we're clear. Your red mortgage capital letter refers specifically to the ownership of the road, not utilities at all, and the difficulty you would have if the city didn't assume ownership of that. It doesn't mention utilities at all, and tonight you said there may be difficulty?
And that's what we need to look into. We had not ever discussed with the city the idea of separating the two, because if we didn't, it wasn't a path that we explored with the lender, but my understanding in general, speaking as to how I've spoken with Rick, is that HUD does not want to be lending against property for which there are off-site obligations or ownership of roads that are actually being used by the public. So all we need to do is make sure that the commitment of the borrower to maintain utilities off-site, in this case under a public road, wouldn't do anything to mess the loan up. It might not. In other words, it may be okay, you're right, the letter's very focused on the ownership of the roads. And if it is okay, then we wouldn't object to keeping ownership and maintenance of the utilities. But we really do feel like we need to go back and explore that with Rick, because we haven't yet. And we just sort of lumped ownership of roads in general in our discussion. So I think we need to look at that a little more closely.
Any questions for the developer?
I'm just going to make a comment. I'm not prepared to make any decision on utilities until I know what utilities are actually there. I don't know, we don't know what's running through those roads. We don't know, all we know is that there's been a video of the sewers, and all we know is there's been a report submitted that the condition is that you will rehabilitate based on the report. So there's not a utility plan. We're talking about utilities, taking utilities within a road that we want to take ownership of, but we don't know what's there. So concerned about sewer lines. I'm not really concerned about stormwater. I'm concerned about sewer lines and water lines. That's where we've had a history of private property failures, and where the city has had to go in and spend a lot of labor and time in repairing and fixing. So it's a big unknown to me.
We could have Sean speak a little bit more to what we do know because of the video work that has been done, and I believe the condition does recommend that all the work that's been done in that report be completed. If there is a need, we're not going to physically know what's under the roads unless somebody took them out. What we know is what's there by the videoing. That's my understanding, and I don't know how much more we'll be able to learn about that in the next couple of weeks.
There's not a utility plan. We don't.
Yeah, I think well, Sean, why don't you speak to that, because I think you have one.
Councilman, we do have an existing utilities plan that we provided to staff. We actually reviewed that existing utilities plan with Public Works today, as a matter of fact. The existing utilities plan, our engineers here as well, that's taken from the improvement plans that were prepared back in 1985 that were reviewed and approved by city staff. So we have also potholed various utilities out there, both in the streets and in private property. We are pretty confident on where the utilities are and what they are in terms of their sizes and where they go. So, and we have provided that to staff. That was a requirement that staff asked for a couple months ago. So we do have a plan that does show all those, and they're very consistent with what was reviewed and approved by staff back in 1985 when they were actually installed.
Okay. Sean, are you in agreement with staff's statement earlier that the utilities that were mentioned service treetops only?
The only difference that I would say is the storm drains do service other. We know for a fact that they at least service Evergreen.
How about sewer and water?
As far as sewer, we do concur with staff that it serves only our property. Water is part of a loop system that is we do know that there is water pressure issues up on that area. We don't know if our system was taken off, if that would affect the neighboring systems, because as you know, water is all under pressure and it's part of a loop system. There are not specific lines that just serve our property because it's part of a loop system. So that's a little bit of a differ from staff. As far as the sewer, yes, I concur with that.
Okay, but Cecily, you said that you would be willing to absorb the ownership of the utilities as long as it didn't jeopardize your loan. Is that correct?
That is what we're proposing at this point. We would need to check and make sure that that's not an issue with our financing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions?
With the only difference of that being the storm drain, I think it's very critical that that goes along with the road.
Mm-hmm.
Understood.
Okay, understood. We're in kind of an awkward situation here tonight. We have a public hearing. We want to try to introduce an ordinance, but until you have that answer, we sure don't want to mess it up. I mean, maybe we have to, I'd be willing tonight to listen to the public because they came down here and see what other concerns they may have, but we may want to continue this till the next meeting.
Well, I'll let the city attorney speak to this, but I think that the portions of the project that relate to the first reading of the ordinance might be able to go forward because the, well, I'll let the city attorney speak on this one issue.
That's really decision for, is this on?
Doesn't sound like.
Yeah.
That's really a decision for the city council, how you want to approach this. And if you're not feeling comfortable about the project, then don't introduce the ordinance. If there is a certain comfort level, you know, then you could go in that direction. So you really have the option. It depends on how comfortable you are in approving the project as a whole.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
My only concern is that, you know, we asked a number of times, and they provided the information for the roadway and the lending and the possible difficulties. And I would hate for them to have to come back at the next meeting saying, whoa, you know, red mortgage says we have a real issue with HUD because we're going to absorb the utilities and now our loan is all messed up. And in the meantime, we're in the middle of an ordinance.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Mayor, that actually you wouldn't want to have taken the step of approving the project and then be re-looking at whether you're going to have to absorb a very costly and important, you know, financial consideration with the utilities. So
we've heard from, through the chair, so we've heard from staff. What is the issue then with the possible postponement of 2 weeks? Is there...
What I was going to suggest, if you wanted to take some public testimony, maybe we could chat a little bit amongst ourselves while you're doing that, because I think we should talk a little bit about the cost of delay of 2 weeks. It's also, I mean, it is possible to introduce something. We're all here, we understand what's going on, that might have to get amended and reintroduced. It's not ideal, but at least we could take a shot at trying to be as close as possible to where we think we're going. And it wouldn't be the first or last time that second ordinances don't get read, but it's not ideal. But maybe we could chat a little bit amongst ourselves about what the 2 weeks means.
That's fine.
And I'm assuming you meet again the first...
22nd.
I'm sorry, in June. If we'd started the first reading on the 22nd, then we'd come back for a second reading. Okay, so July 13th. Okay, all right. Okay,
All right, before
we'll
you
do
leave,
that.
any other questions of the developer at this point in time? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing and see what the public has to say. Ask any questions you may have. If you have any questions for the council or developer, please line up at the podium.
Hi. I'm Subbu, and I'm a resident of Summit Road, which abuts Evergreen Ridge. And,
Excuse me, could you speak right into the microphone?
Yeah, I'm Subbu, and I'm a resident of Summit Road, which abuts Evergreen Ridge. I'm interested in this project going through the renovation project because that site is an eyesore at this point in time, and there's garbage lying there often. But I have one concern about parking, right? As such, with treetops closed, Summit Road is full of cars. I mean, in the sense that there's not enough parking in Evergreen Ridge, and every night I see people coming up, parking there, and then walking down the road to Evergreen Ridge. Now with treetops coming and treetops also not having sufficient parking, I think life around that area is going to be seriously impacted by a parking problem. AIMCO might come back and say that this is a situation that existed before, and so, but I don't see any reason why we cannot rectify the situation. I mean, just because we suffered in the past doesn't mean we have to suffer in the future also. And I think this is an opportunity for the city to rectify the situation. And I don't think the city has done any study as to what is going to be the parking impact if Treetop is allowed to go forward with this renovation project. And my take is that any land that is at this point available should first be dedicated to bringing the parking level of Treetop up to code, and then any new construction be allowed.
All right, thank you very much. Try to get some answers for you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Carolyn Livingood, Sherrill Drive. I want to make it clear that I'd like to see this project be successful. I am a retired union worker. I also have a son in the trades. I'm for the trades getting some jobs. They need them. But I do want to remind you that the residents in Pacific Heights have to live with this project long after everybody's gone. So I'm very disappointed about one thing. I had hoped that egress road would be corrected And I thought maybe that'd be our reward for putting up with the problems we've put up with the last few years. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing any hint that that's going to go forward. So I would certainly hope, it was mentioned, and I have requested, that that area along there be cleaned out. It's a litter area, well, I think Aaron Ackman can back me up on that. He's seen what's up there. I've cleaned it up in the past. Frankly, I can't keep doing it with a bad back. But it needs to be cleaned. It needs to be cleared so that people can see. You know, you have a lot of older people living in that community too. I'm probably one of them. It's hard to turn your head around to see back there sometimes. Some days the neck doesn't want to go the same way you want to go. So I would like to see something done about making sure that they maintain on a regular basis and that they clean up that whole area along Sharp Park Road. I understand they own it, so I don't think we're out of line to ask for that. Also, I'd like to be assured that they're not parking more along Susan Drive, that more cars, and I'm not saying they'd be the only ones, of course. Evergreen is loaded with cars along there. There is never maintenance up there unless I really gripe about it. It's constant litter all along Susan Drive there because the cars don't move and, you know, they can't get in there to clean it up. So that's another area that needs to be cleaned, and it needs to be maintained both by Evergreen and Treetops and by the city of San Bruno. I'm also want to ask a question. I'm assuming that surrounding residents cannot use the clubhouse facilities, that we're not invited in any way there. Also, I'd like to ask if there's going to be a homeowners association. And I ask that because I've had to live, and my neighbors on Sherrill Drive, with the Summerhill project. And while it was a nice project, and they've been fairly cooperative, we've run into problems back there with the drainage ditch, also with people not maintaining their backyards. And thank God they had a homeowners, because when I got hold of Summerhill, they put me in touch with someone. And we met, my neighbors and I met with them and told them they had to get the show on the road to clean it up back there, or we'd have water in our backyards. So it's very important that there be somebody up there that, whether it's a homeowner association or what, that we're guaranteed that they're going to maintain. That property was not maintained in past years. I saw many, many problems up there, and not just these recent ones due to the economy. So we need to have strong emphasis on maintenance and keeping it up on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm a longtime resident at Evergreen Ridge Apartments. I remember Treetops when it was alive and thriving, and we look forward to having new neighbors once again. I'm just simply here to speak about a dissatisfaction with where the trash compactor is going to be placed. This is a huge property. My property is probably just a fraction of what's here. And I understand that the builders here will want to have would want to have premium pricing for these wonderful new apartments. But I just don't feel that it's fair that we should have to, pay the price for that too. So just some strong considerations, if you would, regarding the placement of this compactor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you get her name?
Next speaker, please. Excuse me, just for the record, would you give the city clerk your name? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brad Karinke. I am a partner with Evergreen Ridge Apartments next door to Treetops. I wanted to preface my remarks that we strongly support Treetops' effort, IMCO's efforts to bring this project to completion. As I think we all know in this room, this project, as it's set abandoned, has been a blight on this neighborhood, and our property has certainly been affected by that, our residents, and our ability to do business and rent to new residents of San Bruno. We have owned our property since 1986, so it's almost 25 years we've owned the building. We don't sell property, and we expect to own it for another 25 years, God willing. Our objection is, you've commented already, you've received several letters, I believe, from residents of our property as well as ourselves, is, again, the trash compactor. The trash compactor, just to make sure we're clear here, this is a change from the original development. The original development had your typical dumpsters. As you can see by the site, just to give you some perspective here, we are the only improved property on any of the 4 property lines of the property, and yet Treetops is continuing to insist that this dumpster be located on our property line. The Treetops property is approximately 13 acres. I just find it very difficult to believe that creative minds cannot figure out a way to locate this trash compactor somewhere else on their site away from our residents. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Additionally, the trash compactor is actually located closer to our residents. This is not our trash compactor. It's Treetops for the benefit of their residents. It's located closer to our residents than their own. It's at least double the distance, if not triple the distance, to the nearest unit as compared to our particular property. I also want to address the staff report, and some of the comments have talked about the fact that this trash compactor will only be picked up by the garbage company once per week. They're not emphasizing the fact that this trash compactor is going to be used daily. This property will probably have upwards of 1,000 families in 300 units. They've got 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. So every day for a 3-hour period, they're going to have the staff of this property drag 2-yard containers across their property, causing noise on the other side of our property to dump the garbage in every single day. They proposed to do this 9 to 12. We certainly appreciate the consideration, but it's not taking into consideration that many people in our building work swing shift overnight, and so they need to sleep during the day. So we need to take that into consideration. We spoke with the garbage company. As far as location, the garbage company has said that they can pick up the trash from the trash compactor at any accessible point on Treetops property. I believe this trash compactor is probably on wheels, so it can be pushed out. So again, we simply don't understand why the insistence, especially after, by the way, just as background, we have had meetings with AIMCO to express our objections. We've met on site with AIMCO. This was a big deal at the Planning Commission. There were strong objections from the planning commissioners about locating the trash compactor along our property line. And I feel this is kind of being glossed over. The Planning Commission was talking about find a different location, and yet here we are back with the trash compactor at the same southerly location. There's also been talk about, trash compactors, there's a lot of garbage, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of odor. That's why there's big concern here. There's been an effort to sort of downplay that, like it's okay, it's all right, it's okay, just leave it alone. So if that's the case, then simply AIMCO should move the trash compactor closer to their apartment units and do all the fancy things about noise and all that with their residents. So if they'd simply move it off the southern property line, we would have no issue here. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and good luck.
I have a question for you, if I may. Now, you're with Evergreen.
Yes.
So where, in relationship to your apartments, is your trash facility? Is it a compactor? How is it?
No, we do not have a compactor. There are two at least dumpsters along that property. Along the fence, and then so that answers your question.
Okay. Have you had any issues with odor from your facilities?
No, to answer your question, the issue to us is the amount of it, the amount that's dumped on a daily basis, and the noise of a compactor is different than a every 2 or 3 day pickup, which is only 10 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, as opposed to a 3-hour operation, taking all the garbage from these roughly 300 units or 1,000 families and dumping them in a particular location.
And how big is Evergreen compared for facility-wise, unit-wise, compared to the projected 308 units?
We are 190 units to their 310,
Okay.
308.
All right. And how often does your trash get picked up?
And 3 times a week.
3 times a week. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker, please.
No, I ran out.
I just,
I'm sorry.
excuse me,
We have another question. I'm sorry. For Evergreen?
sir?
His name is,
Brad? We have another question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just curious, how do your residents get their trash to your garbage dump area?
They carry it themselves.
Okay, so there's not, so I just to be clear and kind of equitable, I suppose, you talk about 1,000 families. I think you are really referring to maybe 1,000 people as
Yes,
opposed to...
I'm sorry, yes,
Okay,
1,000 people.
because I thought,
stand
my
corrected.
goodness,
Thank
were
you.
they going to throw 1,000 families in there? Okay, and then I understand your concerns about the noise and all those other things. The reports we have, though, the other sites that were looked at, according to the reports we have, every site has an objection to it as far as either it's going to take parking away, which we've already heard from somebody that they want more parking, not less, and that either the other 2 places that I understand from this report that would be okay, would not take parking, however, it would require people to go in a public right-of-way, and they would have safety issues with it. So I understand your concerns, and I'm sure we're going to discuss it, but with everything that we look at here up in the City Council, there's a plus and a minus. Somebody has to give something, or somebody else has to give something. So just so it's clear to everybody, there's issues on both sides. So thank you.
I understand. If I might respond to that. As from a parking standpoint, the proposed location of, and believe me, I'm no expert on their site plan or what they're doing, but from the site plans I've seen, there would be parking in that location in any event. So if they move it to another spot, all you're doing is trading the 2 or 3 spots for the other 2 or 3 spots. So parking is not an issue here as far as the trash compactor goes. And as far as the report goes, thank you for bringing that up. Apparently AIMCO, after the Planning Commission, commissioned a report, and their own report, talks about major impacts to residents who live near the trash compactor. So their own report talks about that. And again, they picked out 5 locations. None of us in this room, I would imagine, other than AIMCO or maybe staff, knows whether they looked at every single issue. Did they really look to avoid the easement areas or whatnot? So I just say, with 13 acres, there should be and other than the acre or so that runs along our property line, there should be a location that they could find where just take us out of consideration. This is our only objection. Otherwise, we well support the project.
Through the chair, just while you're there,
sure.
I want to tell you that I've read the reports and I was concerned. And I went up to Evergreen last night, drove around, walked around. Hopefully, no one thought I was trying to take anything, but to try to understand and have an appreciation for what the concerns are. Then I overwent to Peninsula Place over here to try to have some kind of a comparison. I know they're 2 different facilities, but I was trying to understand where the receptacles are located, what the conditions are, whether they're concealed. I know it was 15 feet to 40 feet. I know that they've looked at 5 options. I know they, on your facility, it does not seem to be contained. It is open, and it is on the property wall next to treetop. I know that they're trying to limit the time. So as the council member said, it is trying to have a balance, and I do have the appreciation for your concern, and I'm trying to figure out where we have a happy medium too, because obviously that's the only objection that Evergreen has at this time with that proposed property. But I think that they have tried to take some steps and look to some options, and I don't know if you have a specific option of where within the 13 acres you referenced that would mitigate and not have a problem with the parking, because I think parking is always an issue. And whatever we do up here that takes away parking affects people drastically for many years to come. So I think that is something that I need a little more assistance maybe on your end, is exactly where that's not going to, I think some of the steps that they're taking are in the positive, and I think they've tried to look at some various options. So that's what I'm trying to understand too.
Right. I mean, from our standpoint, we've only objected to, along the property line, and it's their project, and with the influence and approval of the city council. So, our feeling was that, as a good neighbor, as corny as that may sound, is that they would find an area on their site, to make it work. Because to me, this kind of seems at the end of the day kind of a small issue in the big picture, but it's a big deal to our residents, and it is permanent. So we do have to address it. As I say, we've met with them. When I say we, Dale Frost of our company met with AIMCO, and we're happy to meet with them to further figure out an area that works. That doesn't have easement issues or whatnot. But it does seem to me that they are looking to have it closer to our building than theirs, and it is their trash compactor. So anyway, to answer your question, I'm more than happy to. We're more than happy to work with them to try and find a suitable location. We've suggested a few, some of which were not included in the report.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just before you sit down, sir, I just need to find the logic in the argument. They're placing a enclosed, confined trash compactor. You can argue what the noise level is, what the smell is, the frequency, but they're locating it nearly opposite on the other side of the fence of your property's open dumpsters. So to me, it makes sense to put the garbage all in one spot, whether there's a property line or a fence right in between. You say that there are complaints or there's concerns from the neighbors in that area, but I have a picture right here of two open dumpsters. They don't even have lids on them. They're not even roofed. So how can you say that there's a concern about, garbage on the property line when your property has it right on the property line and even closer to the building and even more exposed to your residents?
Well, it's a combination of all the above. So we have noise from a compactor. We've heard about the new compactors are quieter, but they do create noise. We're talking about noise on a daily basis of moving the 2-yard dumpsters, whether they do it by trolley or whether they pull them. There's going to be noise on a daily basis versus the pickup of a dumpster that happens every second day or what have you. And there's a short amount of noise. It may be louder. I mean, I concede that, but it's a much rarer occasion. And I simply, to me, at the end of the day, it's a matter of fairness. You can say we're wrong. We should accept it, but there's got to be plenty of areas on that property to find it, and then we're done. We go home. And they build the project. We want them to build the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor Ruane and other honorable members of the City Council. My name is William Knack. I'm here this evening speaking on behalf of the Building and Construction Trades Council of San Mateo County. As a result of our discussions with the developer, we are optimistic that our highly skilled, decently paid construction workers receiving quality health care and pension benefits will be employed to build the Pacific Bay Vistas project, formerly known as the Treetops project. With unemployment in the construction industry running at 30%, this project could not come at a better time for our members. We're looking forward to working with the general contractor to make this project of the highest quality so the city of San Bruno can look upon it with great pride, and I thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public wish to address the City Council? All right, this is a public hearing. If we close the public hearing, you're precluded from, do you want to go now, or you want to wait until we close the public hearing? You want to make a comment?
I just want to make sure that I didn't miss the opportunity to get back on. So if you want to close the hearing and then invite me back up, that's completely fine.
You'll have an opportunity.
All right.
Yeah. So if we
I
close.
have good news.
Hurry up and close the public hearing. Right. If we close the public hearing, you're precluded from speaking to the council on this matter again.
Action?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. All right, developer, you have some information for us.
During the public comment period, Sean Finnegan of AIMCO spoke with Rick Andrews on the phone, and his belief is that so long as we are able to get recorded access easements similar to the kind that the city would get to maintain and repair the sewer and the water, that it would be okay for the ownership and maintenance obligation to be retained for those utilities by the owner, and that the concern about the public roads is that you would have all this public activity. Here, these really do mostly serve the project, and they're underground, and we could control them. So he doesn't believe that that will be an off-site obligation that would be a problem for the lender. So that was good news. We would like to encourage the council, however, on the storm drains, which do serve other projects and cover a greater portion of the road. Not that we think they have any problems, but that would be more appropriately retained by the city. If we can get the roads accepted along the way we've described, we'll do the improvements to the roads, we'll keep the sewers, we'll do all that work, and believe we can work out all the other conditions with staff, and do hope that the city understands that we can come this far, but would like to not have the past reimbursement of $179,000 remain as a condition. And then
All right.
I think we have resolution of all the issues.
Thank you. Any comments from staff regarding that statement?
Do you need a few minutes?
Do we have any issues, or?
Staff doesn't have any additional comments regarding that suggestion.
Thank you. Go ahead.
What is staff's opinion as far as the ownership of the storm drain system?
Yeah, I would say that we need to evaluate that. It has been staff's understanding that all of the utilities served only the Treetops property, but so we would have to evaluate that further to be able to give you a clear understanding.
Okay. Under public comment, we did have a couple of comments regarding parking. I'll address these to Aaron, and you can address them to whomever you want to. Do we have an issue with parking? Has there been some surveys done? Tell us about the issue up there.
It seems the primary parking issue, from what I understand, is there's been a lot of overspill of Evergreen Ridge residents that park along Elston on the back and access the back of the Evergreen Ridge property, as well as parking along Summit and Susan. If there was physically location to add additional spaces, you could add additional spaces. There just really isn't room to add additional spaces. They did add a leasing center, and with that leasing center, they provided the ample amount of parking that's required for that leasing center. So that is out there, and that will serve guests that are coming up to park on the site. So this is actually above the parking requirement that's at Shelter Creek. So it is above that, but it doesn't quite meet today's standards. But there just isn't any physical. They're not adding units. So there's not, and then they're not adding parking spaces, so they're keeping it the same and maintaining as they had before.
Okay, I have had, and the rest of the council have had complaints up in that area about, parking, some primarily speeding too, though. And I just want the public to know that we're trying to address that with the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee to see what we might be able to do to slow people down, because that's a real issue. So, and the other issue too is instead of having one car with one home, now you have 3, 4 sometimes, so it's a difficult situation.
Right. And one condition we did have is that the garage cannot be used as storage.
Right.
So that's something that's worked successfully on other projects. Previously we didn't have that condition, so that will keep the parking open for parking.
Okay.
And regarding speeding, usually when you have a vacant apartment complex and no one in there, it leads people to zip through. So hopefully when we do get those units occupied and there's more activity out there, people will slow down.
Okay. The other issue that came up a couple of times was, of course, the compactor, and I think we've kind of hashed through that pretty well. It sounds like there's been an awful lot of work and research and study done on where to put this compactor well before it came to the City Council. And you have, in fact, addressed another location that was not addressed with the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
Correct. They went over alternative locations in their report that were not addressed with the Planning Commission. The major change that's happened is this proposal that they have now is, and how we're conditioning it, is requiring that the recycling as well as the trash all be in the same location, rather than having the recycling only 15 feet away from the apartment buildings as it was proposed at the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Questions of staff?
Through the chair.
Yes, Michael.
Relating back to the mayor's comments, and your comments also on the parking, not being able to use the garages for storage, and also with the noise issues with the compactor. I'm wondering what mechanism we retain to enforce either a nuisance, and if we approve this and we allow them to go forward with constructing this, they make an investment in it. Will we still have a recourse to go back and say this is not within acceptable limits? And the same with the parking. What mechanism do we use to enforce that nobody's breaking that rule?
I'll take the parking one first because that's a little bit easier. We basically, with parking type requirements, we enforce them on a complaint basis. So if we got a complaint from a resident on Susan, hey, I've seen the garage is open and that there's storage in there, people can't park there, we would go and we first call the property manager and say, hey, you have to enforce your rules and regulations. If they didn't, then we'd have code enforcement follow up and issue fines if necessary. Regarding the trash compactor, that's a little bit more difficult. But if it was exceeding any of our noise requirements within the municipal code that everyone has to apply to, we would have to do something to have them mitigate that. So you could do things like, let's say it's the compaction, the daily compaction that is exceeding the noise level. Perhaps we have them noise insulate the enclosure so that the residents don't have to deal with the noise compaction on a daily basis. I'm sure that just when garbage trucks generally go through neighborhoods, they exceed the noise limit. So I think that's going to happen when they're picking up Evergreen Ridge dumpsters or when they're picking up this compactor. I think the difference is, from talking to Recology, instead of being on site for 2 hours or 3 hours, they're only going to be on site for about 30 or 45 minutes in order to access it. So it's going to be a shorter amount of time when they're there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Irene?
I'm good.
Okay, the last one was from the Building Trades Council regarding union versus whatever the other option is. I think this council has made it very clear of our union support, and if there's any way, shape, or form that this can be union, I know that the AIMCO, and I've talked to them in the subcommittee, that they're going to really try to make this happen. And so we would encourage that if there's any way possible.
Through the chair, yes, to echo that, so we can ensure the highest quality, which is necessary for that project. Something else that was brought up by Ms. Livingood was about, is there a homeowners association, was one of the questions she raised. Right. And then I think there was the concern about the road. Is another question that you addressed.
Right, there were a couple of other things. Is there going to be some type of a improvement aid, some kind of a HOA? I know these are leased units or rental units.
Yeah, usually HOAs typically are with condominium associations or Marisol or Marymount, the two Summer Hill projects, with single-family homes that have an HOA. But what you have here, and according to the applicant statements, you have an on-site property manager, and that would serve the same purpose as the HOA. Okay,
and then what about the? I bet I know the answer to this already, but the clubhouse facilities are for the.
Yeah, those are for, as far as I know, they're private.
Okay, and then the maintenance of Sharp Park Road and the cleanup and the general, that's pretty much in the package, right?
That's in the package, and also if the council wishes to include that additional condition that I stated during my presentation, that they clear the vegetation along the Sharp Park and Susan Drive intersection for site visibility reasons to the satisfaction of the Public services director, and they maintain that site visibility to the satisfaction of the public services director. And I think that will help out a lot. Carolyn and I were outside. We were actually there on that intersection yesterday and looking back, and there's a lot of vegetation there right now, and you can't see well, so that will do a lot just to cut down some of the trees, and they're going to replace those trees, but cut down some of the trees that are there and cut down some of the overgrown vegetation that's there as well.
Okay. Any questions of staff, comment? I'd like to ask the city attorney, based on everything that's transpired this evening, over and above what we knew before we started this, do you have any objection to us this evening adopting the ordinance?
We would need to get a little more sense of where the council is going in terms of the project, how you view it as a whole, and the road issue in order for me to be able to answer that question.
Okay. Well, speaking for myself, we have a few issues here. We have the $179,000, which in fact has been spent. The work has been done. I, for one, don't have a problem with the city taking responsibility for the work that's been done already. I also don't have a responsibility for the city taking responsibility and ownership of the roadway, because it's been pretty much a public roadway historically. I am gratified that the developer is willing to take the responsibility of the utilities. That was a big stumbling block there. And I don't think there's any other major issues, are there?
As Ms. Barkley indicated, we have a number of conditions to just work on, which I'm sure we will endeavor to do very quickly over the next week.
There are more housekeeping issues.
Yeah, and the wording of, and as pertains to the road and the utilities, just the wording of some of those conditions. But I'm quite sure that with the City Council's direction and guidance on these major issues, that we will be able to come to an agreement on those.
Okay. I said my piece. Would somebody else like to chime in? Michael?
So what we're looking at approving is an ordinance that would allow them to have.
I'm sorry.
We're looking at an ordinance that would allow them to have the two designs. Is that the first thing that we're going to decide? I would have a question regarding how this affects any other projects that might come before us in the future. Does this set a precedent where we would basically be forced to do this for anyone who requested it?
I don't think so, but that is a very good question. To the first part, if you introduce the ordinance this evening, we would wait to adopt the resolutions to the second reading so that we have an opportunity to make sure that our wording is correct. As to your second question, does this set a precedent? I think the council, if it wanted to do so this evening or at the next hearing, could make clear that what has led us to this are very unique and unusual circumstances that are speak to this very particular property, and if you're able to do that and to make those findings, I don't believe that it would set a requirement that you act similarly in the future.
I, for one, am quite comfortable with having us pay for the $179,000 sewer repairs that have already taken place and we've already paid for, so we'll just write that one off as a present to you. The road, keep that in mind. The roadway, I feel strongly that we should accept it. We have been using it as the rest of the public in the area and the neighborhood has been enjoying the use of that. And even when the whole project has been closed down and the apartments haven't been used and the AMCO, nobody's been benefiting by it, our public has been able to access and go through it. So I think that's a fair thing for us to do. The utilities, however, I understand with the storm drains, they're connected with the streets and the other things, but I'm sure staff can work that part out. But the underground utilities, sorry guys, those are yours. The other matters are relatively small, and I'm sure you guys will work those parts out. I'm eager, extremely eager to have this happen. We've been waiting and waiting. I know the neighborhood's been impacted. I know people who drive by Skyline coming to visit in the lower area go, what is that up there and why is it there? And it was there 5 years ago when I came to see you, and how come it's still there? So I'm eager to have you proceed, and I expect and I'm sure you will keep your promises to the quality and the excellence that we're all looking forward to.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one suggestion on the 179. If it becomes the desire of the council to waive that as to the 308-unit project, excuse me, it's actually a condition on the extension of the 500-plus unit. And my suggestion would be, though, that you keep it as a condition to the extent if they actually build that project,
Yes.
Then they pay it. Right now, it's a condition on extending the life of the project, and so you could waive it there, but if they actually ended up dumping the rehab project and going back to the original project, you would probably still want them to pay for it. So just clarifying on the record that if they went back and did the project that.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, for this is focusing on the current rather than the 510. This is the 308. Okay.
Okay.
Through the chair. I was going to say that. That's okay. It sounded better from you. The $179,000 was done and has been spent, and that was done for the 510, which was the increase. Therefore, if it was going to at any time go, I know this will work, but what if? And it goes back, then I would say the 179 needs to be paid. No answers or buts, in my opinion. On the roadway use, I think we find fewer folks sitting here tonight than we did some time ago when there was the concept of closing those roadways. We had many residents that came out, wrote, and called because they thought the inconvenience in closing those roads, which was the thought process back at the larger project, brought the residents out. And I think that's why you don't see as many out here this evening, is because in their mind, this project has been brought forward to have those public roadways available to them as it has been for the years. I find that that is of a public interest, and I find that it would be the right thing for us to do, to eventually accept those when they are, as you had said, brought up to speed or as good of a condition, quote, as we can get. I don't want to see it as good as, or if we can hope, because to me hope is on a plan. I'd like to see it definitive and in writing what those expectations are and what they will be. As far as the utilities, I find that critically important that that become a responsibility of the developer and the owner. I think we've learned over the years, I know we go back to long ago, but I think we've all learned over the years what accepting these things, i.e. in Shelter Creek, which is no secret, what that brings to cities, councils, and other items that happen. So that's kind of my piece.
Okay, Mr. Ibarra.
Mr. Mayor, less than a week ago, I was not prepared to accept the road, and neither, and especially not with the utilities. So in the last few days, through discussions with staff, I've grown to accept the road and feel comfortable that the improvements that AIMCO will have and the projected maintenance in the life of the road will be taken care of. The good news is that you brought the good news about the utilities. I was hard-pressed to vote at all, ever, on taking utilities, responsibility for private utilities. I agree with waiving the $179,000 for this rehab project. I'm concerned about maintenance, and a few longtime residents have spoken of that. I think the city needs to deal with, has some work cut out as far as the parking issues in that neighborhood, and it's not all your fault. Maintenance agreement should be, I believe we need to have a maintenance agreement for when this project is complete, so that we have a clear idea of whose responsibility, what to expect in years to come with the landscaping, mainly along the perimeter of this project. It was stated that it has such a large frontage, so we don't want to have future complaints from residents on Elston, Sharp Park, Skyline, and Susan. So I hope that we'd have some language as far as how that's going to be funded and how it's going to be, maintained in the future. And then there's the hopefully of the three's the charm, is that we still have to have a maintenance agreement prior to construction. If November 1st is the date, then so be it. But I want this project to go through, like the rest of us and what the neighbors want. But you can't guarantee it. No one can guarantee it. And if it doesn't, then we have to have something in place. So I hope that that's taken care of. And with that, I'm very pleased with the improvements. I'm very pleased with, to the extent that you're going to rehabilitate this project. I mean, it's practically brand new. So new landscaping, practically new buildings, and so I hope you get your funding.
Does that mean you'd like to introduce the ordinance? Or Michael, you have something else to
There's
say?
one last comment.
One last thing, go ahead.
I guess I'm a little less enthusiastic about the proposal, because we were expecting something a lot bigger, and I realize that doing something is better than doing nothing. But I don't know, I guess almost new is not quite new, and we did hear that some foundation work is going to be not quite up to standards. A lot of the original framing, some plywood is going to remain. I know mold was a big concern there, and those are natural fibers, and mold likes to live in there. And so I would have a question from staff regarding our ability to adequately inspect what's going to remain and provide some level of confidence to the future residents of those apartments that we're not going to have another mold problem. I mean, just because you replace a few pieces, I mean, how sure can we be? Also, I know as I was looking through all the details of the conditions are not the same for a renovation as they would be for a new construction. And I know some of those things we just can't enforce on a project that's not a new construction. So again, what guarantee can we give people that they are going to be somewhere that's safe, that has the same concerns for public safety and for environmental safety that they would have the other way? Can you address that?
Definitely. Regarding the building code issues, this property will be built up to code. It's a difference of will they be meeting the exact way that the 2007 code specifies you have to meet. The building code also gives the building official the responsibility to have them meet the code through alternative means and methods. So although it might not be the exact prescribed way to build a foundation, they would strengthen the foundation in a way that it gives it the same strength as the letter of the code would. So it will be to 2007 code. It just you have to work in a different way when you're dealing with a renovation project. Another thing that we'll do is if they propose to keep a 2x4 in there that's been there before. When our inspector's up there, if they notice that 2x4 has too many nail holes in it, which makes the strength not up to what the strength has to be, they're going to have to remove that. We are taking in I think I've mentioned it in the budget hearing that, our building inspectors are up there on a daily basis, and they're going to be looking at each aspect of it. If the plywood is moldy or if the plywood is weathered to the point it doesn't create the same strength as it should, that plywood will have to be removed and replaced with new plywood. We'll also work with county health to ensure that the mold remediation plan is completely in effect. And I know that AIMCO is working towards the same thing because it's a huge liability issue if there were to have any mold remaining in the units. But we have been working with county health. The buildings will meet 2007 code just through alternative means. Oh, yeah. Okay. And the second issue is the architect made a comment that they are making upgrades to the buildings in terms of accessibility, ADA accessibility. When renovation project happens for a building that was originally constructed prior to 1991, that building does not have to meet all ADA requirements. However, since they are receiving some of their funding through HUD encouraged them to have some accessible units. So they're actually going up and beyond what the current code requires in terms of accessibility for ADA issues. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any action by the council?
I'm sorry,
City
if
Attorney?
I could make one more suggestion, following up on Councilmember Salazar's concern about whether this sets a precedent. I would suggest that the ordinance be amended before the introduction, and I can make sure the correct verbiage is in there for the second reading that really lays out how this is a unique and unusual property and project, and it's due to these unusual circumstances that you're allowing the dual zoning to go forward, and that it should not set a precedent for other applications on this property or elsewhere. So with that, if you introduce the ordinance, I would suggest it be made with that amendment.
Did we also want to include as far as the clearing of the vegetation as well as the noise of the
Condition of
compactor?
approval.
Conditions?
Through the chair, those will actually be in the resolutions, but we've heard, so we'll bring those back. The amended language that Pamela just mentioned will actually be in the ordinance itself.
Okay. Action by the council?
I'll do it. I'd like to waive the first reading, make a motion to waive the first reading.
Second.
Motion second to waive the first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to introduce the ordinance with the uniqueness clause and
the condition of approval.
and the conditions of approvals that was stated and that staff will be implementing. Introduce the ordinance.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Okay, we'll bring this back on the 22nd for the second reading and the introduction of the resolutions. Thank you.